All right, let's dive right in. Today we're tackling the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we've got, well, a whole heap of IMDb user reviews to sift through. It's incredible, really, like having all these different voices chiming in, beyond just the usual critics. Yeah. Well, you get a real sense of how this film landed with people, how they actually felt watching it.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there are some strong opinions flying around it
Absolutely. Passionate debates, I'd say.
about everything. The characters, the length, like, is it a masterpiece or is it just too darn long? And of course, its place in the whole Western genre.
It's fascinating, really, how these reviews kind of map out how the film's been received. Over time, decades after it first came out, people are still grappling with it.
Yeah, and the first thing that really jumps out at you, honestly, is the sheer amount of praise. I
Yeah.
mean, so many reviewers are calling it not just one of the best Westerns ever made, but one of the best films, period.
Yeah.
Some even say it was a life-changing experience.
Wow, really?
Yeah, makes you think, right? How did a film that, honestly, got some flack initially, especially, being a spaghetti Western and all, how did it reach this legendary status?
It's a great question. I mean, it points to a real shift in how critics were seeing things back then.
Okay.
Initially, those spaghetti westerns, the ones made in Italy, often filmed in Spain, right?
Yeah.
They were looked at as, well, imitations. Kind of like they lacked the authenticity, the depth of those classic American westerns,
Yeah.
But the good, the bad, and the ugly, it kind of blew past all that. Became this landmark film, really redefined the genre.
Surely.
Clint Eastwood getting more and more famous, that definitely helped. But there's got to be something more to it, right?
Right.
Maybe it's Leone's style, so visually striking.
Right.
Or how he flips expectations, the way he mixes action with these deeper themes, things that people connect with on a deeper level.
You hit the nail on the head with that, flipping expectations. Because, speaking of which, let's talk about the characters for a second, especially Tuco. Now, everyone loves Blondie, the good, obviously. But Tuco, he seems to be a bit of a sticking point for a lot of the reviewers. Some absolutely love him, think he steals every scene, and others, well, they just want him gone.
Ah, interesting.
Why do you think he provokes such strong reactions?
Tuco, he's like a perfect example of how Leone breaks away from those simple good guy, bad guy tropes you see in, in traditional Westerns. Like, yeah, he's greedy, impulsive, ready to fly off the handle at any moment. But he also has these flashes of, loyalty, even a kind of twisted sense of honor. That's what makes him so interesting. He's morally ambiguous, unpredictable, forces you to really think about your own ideas about good and evil. He's not a hero, not exactly a villain either, just human, flawed, and in the end, I think pretty relatable in his desire to survive.
Yeah, that's true.
And come on, those one-liners, pure gold.
Oh, absolutely. And while we're on the subject of those memorable details, those things that reviewers just kept bringing up, we have to talk about Ennio Morricone's score, right? I mean, it's so much more than just background music.
Oh, yeah.
It sets the mood, builds the tension. It's almost like it embodies the characters themselves,
Yeah.
That scene where Tuco is frantically searching the graveyard, set to the ecstasy of gold. It's breathtaking.
Yeah.
How does Morricone achieve that level of, emotional impact with his music?
He's a master, isn't he? He uses music to tell a story. It's not just about, about writing a catchy tune. It's about this whole sonic tapestry he weaves, one that's completely inseparable from the visuals, from the whole emotional arc of the film.
Yeah, it's like it's woven right into the fabric of the film.
Exactly. For instance, he uses, specific instruments or musical motifs to represent each character. Blondie might get a soaring trumpet theme, while Tuco's theme is more frenetic, uses guitars, harmonica.
Yeah, I can hear that.
He also plays with diegetic and non-diegetic sound,
Refresh my memory. What's the difference again?
Sure. Diegetic sound is like sound coming from within the world of the film. Like, the characters talking, gunshots, things like that. Non-diegetic sound is added later, like the score. And Morricone, he blends these seamlessly, blurs the lines between what's real and what's imagined. It pulls you deeper and deeper into the film's world.
It's almost like he's creating a whole other dimension to the story, something you might not even pick up on if you're not really paying attention.
Exactly. And this attention to detail, it extends to everything Leone does as a director. He uses those long, uninterrupted takes to build tension, makes you linger on a moment, really soak up the atmosphere. His close-ups, those are iconic,
Yeah.
draw you right into the character's eyes. You see all their inner turmoil, their complexity.
Wow.
Those techniques, combined with Morricone's score and, that stunning cinematography, it all comes together to create an incredibly immersive experience.
It's like he's painting this picture with sound and visuals, creating a world that feels, I don't know, both familiar and completely unique.
But speaking of unique, one thing that really struck me about the reviews was the whole debate over the film's runtime. I mean, at almost 3 hours long, some people found it a bit much, while others were adamant that every minute is essential to the story.
Yeah, it's a long one, that's for sure.
What are your thoughts on this? Is the length justified? Could it have been, I don't know, trimmed a bit without losing its impact?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of Leone's style, you know? He's not interested in, like, fast-paced action or quick cuts. He wants to immerse you in that world, let those moments breathe, build tension slowly and deliberately. Those long stretches of silence, the scenes that just seem to go on forever, they're not just filler. They're essential for creating that sense of epic scope and emotional weight.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like he's slowing down time itself, making you feel every step of the journey. Precisely. And that intensity, it's not just for show. Leone is using the Western genre with its, typical characters and familiar tropes to explore much deeper themes. He's asking questions about morality, greed, the human cost of war.
Speaking of the war, it's fascinating how Leone subtly weaves the Civil War into the film's backdrop. It's not just about a treasure hunt. It's a story set against this backdrop of a nation tearing itself apart. And I think that context really adds something, gives it a depth that goes beyond a typical Western.
Absolutely. The war isn't just a setting, it's a metaphor for all the bigger conflicts that drive the characters. That battle scene at the bridge, that's a powerful one, not just visually, but for what it says about, the pointlessness of violence, how it destroys lives, and leaves scars that run deeper than any bullet wound.
And then to end the film in that vast graveyard.
Yeah.
It's such a haunting image. Like, he's reminding us that in the end, all this greed and violence just leads to death, to loss, to the destruction of everything we value.
It's a powerful message, and it's one that continues to resonate with audiences even today.
It really does make you wonder, how might the film be different if it were made in, say, Hollywood today?
Yeah.
Would it have that same raw, gritty feel? Would it be able to explore those darker themes with the same level of, I don't know, depth and nuance?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, it speaks to how the Western genre has evolved, how filmmaking in general has changed. Would today's audiences have the patience for Leone's slow, deliberate pacing?
Right.
Would the violence be toned down? Would the characters be more clearly defined as heroes and villains?
It's hard to say. But I think part of what makes the good, the bad, and the ugly so powerful, so enduring, is its willingness to challenge conventions, to embrace ambiguity,
Yeah.
and to leave the audience with, with more questions than answers.
And that's exactly why it continues to fascinate people, to spark discussions, even after all these years. It's not just a film, it's an experience, one that stays with you long after the final shot, makes you question your own values, your own understanding of, of good and evil.
Absolutely. And in a world that, I don't know, that often feels increasingly divided and uncertain, those themes are maybe even more relevant now than ever before.
That's a good point. It's something a lot of the reviewers brought up, actually, how the film resonated with their own lives, their own struggles, their own search for meaning.
Interesting.
It seems like this film has a way of speaking to people on a personal level, even though it's set in a time and place far removed from our own.
It's like, even though it's a Western, it's really about the human condition, isn't it? About the choices we make, the consequences we face, and that universal desire for connection, for belonging.
Exactly. And it's through Leone's mastery as a director, his use of visuals, sound, pacing, that he's able to convey these complex themes in a way that feels both, visceral and thought-provoking.
Speaking of Leone's direction, there were a lot of comments in the reviews about his visual style. People talked about those long, uninterrupted shots, the extreme close-ups, the way he builds tension with silence and framing. One reviewer even said it felt like watching a painting come to life.
Leone was a master of visual storytelling. He understood the power of the image, how it can convey emotion and meaning without relying on dialogue. And he wasn't afraid to challenge the conventions of traditional filmmaking. Those long takes, the slow burn, they force you to become more engaged, to really pay attention to what's happening on screen.
It's like he's inviting us to slow down, to savor the moment, to appreciate the artistry of each shot.
Absolutely. And he's not just showing us pretty pictures. He's using those visuals to tell a story. to reveal character, to build tension, to create a mood.
And I think that's part of what makes it so captivating. You're not just passively watching. You're drawn into the world, the atmosphere, the psychology of the characters. You feel the heat of the sun, the dust in your throat, the weight of every decision.
Exactly. And speaking of the characters, there's an interesting observation in one of the reviews about how Leone introduces each of the three leads. It's almost like a visual shorthand for their personalities.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Tuco bursts out of a window, mid-meal, all chaotic energy.
Right.
Angel Eyes emerges from the distance, slowly, menacingly, until his face fills the screen. And Blondie steps into the frame as if he's always been there, cool and collected.
It's so subtle, but it tells you everything you need to know about them, but their motivations, their approaches to life. Tuco is impulsive, driven by immediate needs. Angel Eyes is calculating, patient, and ruthless. And Blondie is the enigmatic wild card, always one step ahead.
It's like Leone is playing with our expectations right from the start. He's setting up these archetypes, the good, the bad, the ugly, but then he subverts them, showing us the complexities and contradictions within each character.
Exactly. And that subversion extends to the genre itself, Leone takes those classic Western tropes, the gunfights, the pursuit of fortune, the rugged landscapes, and he twists them, infuses them with his own unique vision.
He's deconstructing the myth of the American West, isn't he? Showing the grit, the moral ambiguity, the human cost behind that romanticized facade.
Exactly. And he's doing it with a sense of style and grandeur that elevates the film to something truly epic. One reviewer even described it as operatic, and I think that's a fitting analogy. There's a sweep, a scale, a heightened sense of drama that's both captivating and thought-provoking.
It's interesting that you mentioned the operatic quality because several reviewers pointed out the influence of Italian filmmaking tradition on Leone's work. They talked about the rich history of Italian storytelling, the sense of melodrama, the emphasis on visual spectacle.
Absolutely. Leone wasn't working in a vacuum. He was drawing on a deep well of cinematic heritage. And he was also pushing the boundaries of that tradition, creating something wholly original.
It's like he took the best of both worlds, right? The visual storytelling of classic American Westerns and the emotional intensity of Italian cinema.
Yeah.
And forged something entirely new.
Exactly. And it's a testament to his artistry that the film can be enjoyed on multiple levels. You can appreciate the action, the gunplay, the suspense, but you can also delve deeper, explore the themes, the characters' motivations, the historical context.
It's a film that rewards repeat viewings. Each time you watch it, you notice something new, some detail you missed before.
And that's the mark of a truly great film, isn't it? It stays with you long after the credits roll, it sparks conversations, challenges your assumptions, and continues to resonate with each generation that discovers it.
And it really does. And, while we're talking about those impressions, those things that stick with you, we can't overlook the humor in this film. Because, for all the grit and violence, the good, the bad, and the ugly also has these moments of, surprisingly dark comedy.
Oh, absolutely. That dark, cynical wit, it's a signature of Leone's style. And, a lot of times it's Tuco who brings those moments of levity, his physical comedy, those sharp one-liners. He's such a contradiction, a greedy outlaw who can make you laugh in the tensest situations.
Exactly. Like the scene where he's picking out a new gun, remember?
Yeah.
And he rejects each one with this dramatic flair, complaining about everything.
Oh, I remember that.
The weight, the feel, it's classic Tuco. Fussy, theatrical, totally self-absorbed.
Totally. It's those moments that add another layer to the film's violence, It's not just there for shock value. It serves a purpose. It drives the story, reveals character. The humor also highlights how absurd these situations are, It's like Leone is winking at the audience, acknowledging how theatrical the Western genre can be.
He's playing with it, right?
Absolutely. He's paying homage to the Western while also kind of, deconstructing it at the same time, showing us the flaws, the moral complexities beneath the surface.
Speaking of complexities, one reviewer pointed out something I thought was really interesting. How Leone uses religious and family imagery in the film. Which, you wouldn't necessarily expect in a gritty Western.
You would think so.
But if you look closely, those themes are definitely there, adding another layer.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like Tuco's encounter with his brother, the priest. It's a surprisingly, poignant scene, full of regret, unspoken love. It shows us a side of Tuco we haven't seen before, a glimpse of his, his vulnerability, his longing for connection.
It's a humanizing moment. And setting that scene against the backdrop of the Civil War, with all its moral ambiguities, adds even more meaning, you know? It's like Leone is suggesting that even in the midst of all that chaos and brutality, there's still room for compassion, for forgiveness, for reconciliation.
Even in the darkest of times, there's still hope for human connection.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even the toughest characters, the ones we might write off as bad guys, are capable of change, of growth, of finding redemption in the most unexpected places.
And that brings us back to the film's enduring power. I mean, it's not just a Western, is it? It's this meditation on what it means to be human, on the choices we make, the consequences we face, and that constant search for meaning in a world so often defined by, well, by greed and conflict.
It's a film that asks big questions, but it doesn't give you easy answers. It makes you think, it makes you debate, it makes you reevaluate your own values, your own beliefs.
It challenges you.
Exactly. And that's, that's the mark of a truly great work of art, isn't it? It challenges you, provokes you, stays with you long after it's over. It starts conversation, inspires debate, and prompts us to look at the world and ourselves in a new way.
And it seems like every generation finds something new to appreciate in it. One reviewer even mentioned watching it with their son, who was actually named after Clint Eastwood's character.
Wow, that's amazing. It really speaks to the film's ability to transcend time and cultural boundaries. It's become more than just a film at this point. It's a cultural touchstone, a reference point for everything from, I don't know, music videos to other films.
Speaking of other films, a few reviewers mentioned the influence the good, the bad, and the ugly has had on directors like Quentin Tarantino. The violence, the dark humor, that unique visual style, it's all there in his work.
Oh, absolutely. Tarantino's admiration for Leone is no secret. He's taken those elements that Leone pioneered and, well, reinterpreted them for a modern audience. But as many reviewers pointed out, there's something about the original that can't be replicated.
It can't be touched.
Exactly. Maybe it's the historical context, the way it captures that specific moment in time. Or maybe it's the sheer audacity of Leone's vision.
He wasn't afraid to take risks, to push the boundaries of what a Western could be, to challenge what audiences expected. And those risks, they paid off. He created a film that's both timeless and groundbreaking, a work of art that continues to inspire and provoke discussion.
It's like he tapped into something primal, something universal about the human experience. The greed, the violence, the struggle for survival. These are themes that, that resonate across cultures and time periods. It doesn't matter when or where you watch it, it hits you.
And he did it without sacrificing, entertainment value. The film is thrilling, suspenseful, and visually stunning. You're on the edge of your seat from beginning to end.
It's the perfect blend of art and entertainment, proof that a film can be both thought-provoking and a truly captivating cinematic experience.
And it's a reminder that sometimes, the most enduring films are the ones that challenge us, the ones that make us think, the ones that stay with us long after the final shot. Films that linger in our minds, prompting us to reconsider our assumptions and explore new perspectives.
And in a world that's, saturated with remakes and reboots, it's refreshing to revisit a classic that still feels so fresh, so original, so utterly captivating.
Just one of a kind.
Absolutely. So to anyone listening who hasn't seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, do yourself a favor and check it out. And even if you've seen it before, I think this deep dive has given us all a richer understanding of its context, its impact.
Absolutely. It's a film that deserves to be watched, discussed, and, cherished for generations to come.
Yeah, it's really remarkable, isn't it, to think that a film made over 50 years ago can still feel so relevant, so, I don't know, so timely. It says something about the power of a good story and how some themes like greed, violence, that struggle for survival, they transcend time and place.
Absolutely. The good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not just a Western. It's this, this timeless tale. It speaks to something deep within us, the human experience. And the way Leone directs, his ability to, blend those epic scenes with these really intimate character moments, well, it keeps people coming back generation after generation.
And speaking of those intimate moments, something that struck me reading through the reviews was how much people connected with the characters. Even the ones who were, considered bad or ugly. Yeah. It seems like Leone's ability to portray those complexities of human nature, that blurred line between good and evil, it really resonated with people. It's one of the things that makes this film so unique. Leone doesn't give you easy answers, those black and white moral judgments. He gives you these flawed characters who are often contradictory, and he lets you, the viewer, draw your own conclusions. We see those glimpses of humanity in the most unexpected places, and that's what makes the film so thought-provoking.
It's like he's saying that even in the most brutal situations, in the middle of a war, there's still that potential for compassion, for connection, for, I don't know, for moments of grace.
Exactly. It reminds us that even in a world filled with so much conflict, so much greed, there's still hope for redemption, for finding meaning, even in the face of, in the face of adversity.
It's a powerful message, and one that feels, I don't know, particularly relevant these days,
Yeah.
in a world that often feels so divided, so polarized. It's a good reminder that we all share that common humanity, that even those who seem different from us are ultimately driven by, by the same things,
Yeah.
The same desires, the same fears, the same hopes.
Absolutely. And it's through art, through films like this, that we can explore those complexities, challenge those assumptions we have, and maybe even gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
So to anyone listening who hasn't yet seen The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, do yourself a favor and seek it out, really. And even if you've seen it before, I think this deep dive, hopefully, has sparked a new appreciation for it, for its lasting themes, for Leone's brilliance as a director.
I agree. It's a film that deserves to be watched, discussed, cherished for years to come.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Thanks for joining us on this journey. And remember, there's always more to discover beneath the surface, whether it's in a classic Western or, in the world around us. Until next time, keep exploring.